Hello, everyone, and welcome to Turn Digi. This is our Christmas special, December 16th, 2021. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. We have a great lineup, as always. We have Azeem, Ulrika, and Marty sharing their tips with us at our Christmas special. Before we kick off, I just wanted to give a brief intro about Turn Digi and also what we have done so far. So I'm SEO Joe Blogs, Joe Juliana Turnbull. I'm based here in Barcelona, and Turn Digi is really an event for anyone to learn about online marketing, and you can connect from anywhere in the world. Today we have people dialing in from our speakers dialing in from the UK, Sweden, and the US and Spain. And I set this up in April 2020 as we saw many things and events, of course, being cancelled due to lockdown. So we've now had 10 events in total. We've had not only English, but in French and Spanish as well. And it's a diverse lineup. So we've had 21 different nationalities, and we've had 63 unique speakers in total. This event does help to promote entrepreneurs, and 57% of our speakers have been entrepreneurs. And this includes today as well. And we have 75% that are female. So I always want to make sure that we do have a diverse lineup, that we make sure that we include actionable tips, which is how we've continued to this day. And I'm really pleased to say that not only do we welcome new speakers, but those new speakers have also gone on, like in Search London, the other event that I run, to actually speak at some big events. And as a result of your support for Turn Digi, we became runner-up for Digital Innovator 2021 as part of the Digital Women Awards 2021. So thank you everyone for supporting Turn Digi. I just run this in my free time. I will be running some more events in 2022. Nothing is confirmed yet. So if you want to get involved, please do contact me. Now, today we have three great speakers, Azeem, Ulrika, and Marty, and they are sharing their tips about diversity in digital, tech SEO, and creative content. If you enjoying the show today, click a like in the video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's really great to hear from all of you, and those that have signed up to the newsletter, you will receive the email with the links to all the presentations. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Azeem, who will begin his presentation about diversity in digital. One other thing, if you have any questions for our speakers, we will be answering them after each presenter has finished. Please write them in the chat, and please also continue to share the nice social love using the Twitter handle @TurnDigi. So I'll pass over to you. Azeem, thank you very much for joining us today. I think this is your third Turn Digi today.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're not sick of me yet, but yeah, thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to join not only yourself, but also two other excellent speakers. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us today. So I'll pass over the stage to you, and we will come back for Q&A.
I have the power. Awesome. Thank you very much. So yeah, look, as Joe mentioned, my name is Azeem Ahmad, better known as Azeem Digital, purely because people can't really tend to spell my name right. That's the honest answer. So yeah, look, before anything else, I know I'm going to forget this later on, so I just want to say a massive thank you to Joe, what she's done over the past 12 months and even before, and what she will do beyond. Is incredible. So massive thank you. It definitely doesn't go unnoticed. And please, whether you're watching this live or on the playback recording, please take some time to send Joe and the other speakers thank you, because they've given up a lot of time to make this happen for your learning and also entertainment if you want to laugh, because sometimes I might get a little bit angry during this talk. But anyway, we move. Let me tell you a little bit more about me. I'm a digital marketing lead. I have my own podcast called the Azeem Digital Asks, all-round digital marketing podcast. I've been an industry awards judge, speak at conferences, and outside of that, I enjoy fitness, chocolate, and trying to survive on up to 5 hours of sleep. Fun fact, I've been awake since like probably 4 a.m. this morning. There's probably enough caffeine inside of me to kill a horse. So let's go. I want to talk to you about DI essentially being better in 2022. Whether this is the first time you've seen me talk about this topic, or whether it's the second or third or however many times, I'm hoping that you're going to take something interesting and valuable away from this. So ultimately, I think the best place to start is here. And whenever I talk about diversity and inclusion, this is something that I always start with. So essentially, it's the difference between diversity and inclusion. That's important because in a second, I'm going to swap inclusion for confusion. So the difference between diversity and inclusion is being invited to the party and having a great time at the party. That's key because pre-pandemic, many people saw DEI activities as basically a check in the box, for example. I won't be too specific now, but they're very much focused on the D of DEI and not the I. And hopefully by the end of this short talk, you'll take something away from this. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about diversity and confusion. This is a survey done by a company called The Mistakable. And essentially they surveyed people to find out more about DEI in the workplace. So these stats, I believe, are very much UK focused, and I'd love to see what they would look like if they were focused on a US or even more global scale. But essentially what they found, excuse me, and this survey was conducted during the pandemic, over 40% of surveyed UK workers still afraid to say the word black in relation to race and ethnicity in the workplace. So that's 4 out of 10 people essentially still afraid to use the word black to describe somebody. 1 in 6 fear they'd lose their job if they get things wrong, and 30% would feel that it would lead to disciplinaries. There's still a lot of stigma around this and a lot of tension around talking about certain facets of DEI. Perfectly described in this slide. So people seem to be more confident talking about death, which is not the easiest or most joyful topic to discuss, rather than race and ethnicity in the workplace. Hopefully by the end of this very short talk, I'm going to give you some things to take away. 1 in 15 misuse the word diverse to avoid saying what they actually mean. So more often than not, a small handful of people are getting things wrong. So they're not really sure what they mean, which is, as a person of colour myself, that's incredibly frustrating. One of the things that I wanted to touch on before I go into the sort of main 5 things of this talk is that over the past 2 years, I've been running surveys annually across people, not just in the UK, but anybody that I'm connected with on Twitter. And my handle is just after my name. It's at Azeem Digital, or you can see it in the slide. But essentially, I surveyed people about how they felt, certainly around DEI in marketing. And I've looked at various different things, including conferences, workplace, salaries, and all sorts of things. So I'd urge you to check out my website after the next few talks and have a look if you are further interested in this topic. But I honed in on this slide because when I did this survey last year in 2020, 62% of people felt that their identity or their ethnic background has had an impact on their career opportunities this year. And bear in mind, it might be seen that the stats for 2020 would be a little bit muddied because the pandemic started during 2020, but in 2021 that number rose to 75%. So where we're expecting things to decline, they actually rose, which was really disheartening for me to see, because you would expect that, we're 18 months, maybe more into this pandemic now. Companies are forced to work remotely. Lots of change happened. The remote versus the in-office one was probably the biggest one. And maybe those DEI initiatives fell down. But essentially, those people who identify or would fit into that diverse category already felt distance from their white colleagues, and they'll be further distanced by this sort of measure. So if I just whiz on, part of my survey, I asked people what they thought, and this is literally verbatim what they said, completely anonymous. And often, as a sidestep, I did receive, and I did the year before, receive some abuse through the survey. That's by the by, that's how it is. Some people don't like to approach these things head on, but here's just a flavor of what people said. People that can make a difference stay silent month after month, have no interest in what it must be like as a POC in our industry. Recently attended a webinar where somebody said marketing addresses diversity by putting a black person on a brochure instead of dealing with the harder stuff. underrepresented in senior roles, despite being the better candidate, have to work twice as hard to get the same recognition, arguably more during the pandemic. Certainly, I feel that way. Certain agencies hire people based on whether they look good for them because of their name or status. And I will add in there maybe their LinkedIn or Twitter following, for example. It's embarrassing to see the same type of faces announced week after week. So that's just a flavour of what people said. And this is the part that I want to hone in on before my time is up. It's about being better. And if you saw me talk early this year, one of the things that I mentioned about being better was this. I mentioned here, this isn't a blank slide. What I want you to see is what I see. And this is another marketing list to follow, or another conference that's come out. It's entirely white. You would have thought that the pandemic, for example, during the conferences would have had a more diverse lineup, a different range of people speaking. However, that wasn't the case, even with events like this virtually. And again, a massive shout out to Turn Digi and Joe for putting in a lot of hard work for making this happen and proving that it is possible, rather than just, sticking to the same handful of speakers again. Because the argument before, when conferences were in person, was the fact that, I need to invite Joe or Jane Blogs to speak because they sell tickets. It's not the same, I don't think, for virtual events, because all you need is a laptop or a phone and an internet connection and you're good to go. Here's some of the things that I think need to be done before I wrap up this talk. So for business, certainly every leadership bonus is tied to D&I initiatives. If people of colour or women are not being paid fairly, then neither should the leadership. Always one of the things that you see here in the UK, certainly for sure, during November, is that there'll be a certain point of the year where women are being effectively paid for free. Women are effectively working for free because they're being paid less than men. That needs to stop, which I'll touch on in my later slides. But for this slide here, if people of colour, marginalised people, women are not being paid fairly and are not being compensated at least a fair rate equivalent to their white counterparts, then neither should the leadership. That needs to be something that comes from the top down as a real statement of intent. Excuse me. Speaking of statements of intent, every year people and companies should start to measure and publicly release detailed yearly diversity data, and it's all about being accountable. So there have been companies last year who have done this, and for example, I'll take a big one, Snap. They did that. They released this information, and they did it at a time, and I can't remember what was in the news at the time, but there was a big news event happened and they sort of released theirs very late and sort of buried it under the larger news story. But it came out and it was difficult to read because of their employee makeup, and they committed to doing the same for following years. But by far and away, the best example of this I've seen is Adobe. I was having a nose around their analytics products, and then I came across this area of their website, which essentially was an entirely mini website of its own. Incredible amount of detail from every level down about how diverse and inclusive they are, from literally the entry level of the company right to the top. If I move on, wage equity schemes, as I've mentioned, rather than just talking about it, essentially be about it. I mentioned about women and POC, and I mentioned earlier in the talk, once a year, companies will, women will effectively work for free. So we know women are paid less than men, and we know paid less than their white counterparts, and we know POC are paid less than their white counterparts as well. But what we don't really discuss, certainly in my experience, is what it must be like if you are a black woman, for example. So not only are you a POC, but you're also a woman, so you're being penalized twice there. That needs to change for sure. As I mentioned, and as you'll see on my blog, 15 minutes is not enough time to talk about this, but essentially I've touched on it earlier. Conferences, diversify your lineups, and most importantly, pay your speakers where it's possible. Very good friend of mine, Arija Abwali, she runs conferences and she pays speakers, and she's proved time and time again that it's entirely possible. And there are some conferences that claim to be large conferences that have been established for many, many years. It's taken her a very short amount of time, and she's proved that it's possible by not only including diverse and inclusive lineups and putting women and elevating women to the top, but also paying them as well. That's important. This is another big one. Again, I mentioned 15 minutes is not enough, but saying a salary is competitive is not enough these days. And the typical strapline that you'll see over here in the UK is we welcome candidates from a diverse and inclusive background. I think businesses need to do more, certainly with everything that's happening now. Number one, include what the salary is. Even if it's a range, just include what that is. The word competitive means nothing. If you don't believe me, call up one of your utility suppliers and say, hello, I'd like to pay my month's bill competitively this month. They'll probably hang up the phone on you. You need that information, because not only do you need to go for an employable and enjoyable job, you need to make sure you can continue to keep a roof over your head as well. So that's incredibly important. These are the 5 steps that I have mentioned. So if you're watching this live, feel free to take a screenshot. If you're watching this on recording, hit pause, grab that. And if you're a decision maker in your company, 5 ways you can make things happen next year. If you're not a decision maker and you're watching this, take a screen grab and send it to that person or that people. Chances are they're probably white. Tell them how this industry, their business, and more importantly, as a whole, the marketing community can improve. That is basically pretty much that. There's 2 last things that I want to leave you with. So if you're a white person watching this and your feathers have been ruffled, there's 2 things that I want you to remember. The first one is, if you are in a position of privilege and you are enjoying that position of privilege, you don't believe in anything that I've just said, then the idea is that you need to get comfortable with paying, because eventually it will happen. Maybe not in my lifetime, but eventually people of color, women, anybody marginalized will be on the same level and the same playing field. And if you're not on board with the program, it's going to be a painful ride for you. But more importantly, for those people who recognize that they have white privilege, you have to understand that it will be painful giving up some of that to understand what it is like to be a woman or a person of color who are treated inherently differently to yourself. And this one is something that a guest on my podcast said to me, which has stuck with me for a long, long time. The fact that talent is equally distributed and opportunity is not. And I think that is incredibly important. So if you take anything away from this, it's definitely that last line. We need to make sure that these opportunities are distributed equally, rather than just saying, we need more talented people. We need more opportunities. That's what we need. That is me. I would love it if you followed me on Twitter. I'm at Azeem Digital. That's my website. You can find loads more content on there. And a quick shout out to my podcast too, the Azeem Digital Asks podcast, of which Joe has been a guest. So definitely check that out. But what I do is I try and prioritize the voices of those who are typically underrepresented in the marketing industry. So women, POC, and I very recently did an episode which pushed me out of my comfort zone, which forced me to learn a little bit more about the LGBTQ plus community. It's not perfect. I'm definitely learning more about the subject, but the reason why I'm starting this is to help give these people a voice and an equal platform. So that's me. Thank you very much, Joe, for having me. There are 2 more great speakers to follow. Please stick around, show them some love. But yeah, that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Azeem, for that. You had a lot of great tips. And I especially like what you said last slide about that you're not no means perfect, but you are making the effort. And I just want to reiterate that as well. Obviously, there's lots of things that Turn Digi can do even more. But I think it's great that you are also providing a platform for people. Going back to your saying that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. I think that sums it up perfectly. So yeah, Sylvia also said great points as you mentioned. I'll just ask Ulrika and Marty if they have any questions, and then I will ask. I have a couple myself.
I would just like to take the opportunity to thank you, Azeem, for bringing this up, being a woman. But yeah, a super important topic, and we need more people talking about it. And so that we can come into that brighter future. So thank you for that. And super, super valid points.
I think I'm good. I think you covered the topic well, and I understand all your points.
Yeah, well, thank you, Azeem. I wanted to ask you really, I mean, you gave some great, sort of screenshot, a couple of slides towards the end about clear actions to improve this industry, ensuring every leadership bonus is tied to D&I initiatives. So actually, I haven't seen loads of people do that. I did see actually one CEO who reduced his salary. I think he had a payment system company so that other people could actually have a decent salary. Do you have any examples of some great companies that are doing this?
Yeah. There are a few smaller companies in the UK, so they're not sort of well known globally, but they've been incredibly well. They've been very successful enough to the point where the leader, the founder of the company, has taken a pay cut. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Will Reynolds has recently just done that, and I'm sure I read something very recently on Twitter where he decided that he was going to lower his salary and make sure that his employees and his company are quite fairly compensated. And that's not the first time that he's done something like that. I think during the start of the pandemic, he effectively introduced sort of his own system to help some of his employees out. But one of the things that I remember from that is not only did he assist their employees, but he also was mindful and conscious of the fact that some of the employees have got families, husbands, wives, and he made sure to look after them. So yeah, there are a few examples there, but I think really and truly there probably should be more. You always see, I certainly see over here, companies announce, this year we've increased our profits by 576%. We've turned over X amount this year. For me, I'd quite love to see, we've made X amount and we've given that back as a profit share, or we've increased the salaries of our lowest paid, or we've ensured that women are paid equally in our team. We've ensured that people of colour are paid equally as well. I think there's a wider discussion to be had there, salary transparency. But yeah, to answer your question, there's a couple of them, yeah, for sure.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Azeem. I have seen for the past few months that people are a little bit more open to sharing salary, and I think that's really good, just so that at least even when people are just applying for jobs, at least you know what that salary is. It shouldn't be like a guessing game. So
what about if you're an employer and you don't know what the right salary is and you need to explore the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think I've done this in the past where literally, as you said, explore the marketplace, see what companies are paying or what the sort of average rate is.
I mean, as an employer, what about if we create a new position at our company, do our research? It's an innovative position, and we need to understand what to pay for it by exploring candidates. Does that mean that in the new system of transparency, we would not have a place?
That's a really good point.
The cost of innovation is that the cost of innovation is not being respected by potential employees?
Well, this is probably something we could have a very, very long discussion about, but I would say if it's something that's a new role that you can't really benchmark against the industry or against other companies in your sector that are doing this, then it really, the onus falls onto the employer to decide what the right rate is. And generally speaking, for example, if you were horrendously underpaying what the, let's say, market rate is for that role, you would see that reflection come through in the quality of candidates. You would get a lower quality of candidates. If before you push this role live, the correct amount of due diligence was done and you arrived at a number or a range that you felt was reflective of the current market rate, I would imagine that you would see that in the quality of candidates coming through. So in short, it's a tough one where you can't benchmark it inside your existing company, but where you can benchmark it against the industry and you're happy to find something along that medium, you will definitely see that in the quality of candidates coming through. When I've been hiring in the past, and I've had a range imposed on me from above to say we can only pay X amount for this, we've seen through the quality of candidates coming in that the company would probably have to invest a certain amount of money to train that individual up to get to the right standard, just for the sake of underpaying them versus the market rate. Whereas if you pay the market rate, again, that's subjective, but when you pay somebody the right rate, you'll generally get a better quality of candidate. I certainly feel that for sure. I mean, feel free to disagree, but that's certainly what I've noticed in the past.
I just wanted to say one point on that. Just I think it's really, if the role is not, if people don't know what that role is, I think they shouldn't ask the candidate, what do you want? Because then that candidate's like, well, if I say a low price, you obviously think I'm not worthy or I don't value myself. If I say something too high, you think I'm too expensive. So I think it's fair if the employer does a salary range, so then at least you can, be between two figures, and it's not like
If the candidate says, if we ask the candidate what they want for a job and they say too low a number, we say that's not enough.
Oh, very good.
That's
good.
Brilliant. Yeah, for sure.
Good.
On the flip side, very quickly, when I am a candidate, or when I have been a candidate for roles, naturally the question comes to, what am I currently earning? So the prospective company can benchmark where I'm at. I never tell them exactly to the pound or to the dollar what I earn. I always give a salary within a range. So let's say, for example, my salary was £72,000. I'll always say my salary is between £67,000 and £77,000. That's where I'm at. I know from then that prospective employer's next question is going to dictate how the rest of that process is going to go. Because if they push me for a specific number, they're trying to benchmark what they can pay me against what I'm against now. If they're happy with the range that I've provided, which they would have seen that in the application, then we can start to have a professional relationship together. But if an employer or prospective employer pushes me to say, what are you specifically on, then I'll know that this is not the right sort of place for me. That's, as a candidate, that's what I do.
Well, there is so much more we can talk about here. So, but I know we have two more great speakers to share their tips. So just want to say thank you very much, Azeem, for presenting today. And you can find him at Azeem Digital or IamAzeemDigital.com. And we will send you the link to the slides after the event. So now I have also the pleasure of introducing Ulrika. So Ulrika, actually I met her through Women in Tech SEO, and I'm really happy that I did. She was my mentor during the program. And also a big shout out to Women in Tech SEO who have supported Turn Digi, as well as Latinas and SEO too. So I'm really looking forward to this talk as well, basically how to do a tech audit on a JavaScript site without actually knowing JavaScript. So without further ado, I will pass over to Ulrika.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, this was a request from you, so I'm actually doing this for you, Joe. So yeah, I'm going to introduce myself. I am Ulrika, and I own the agency myself, but I've been in search for 14 years, so a long time now, and I'm mostly done technical SEO, but also strategic SEO. I run an SEO agency or a digital agency called Unikorn, and we are in Stockholm, Sweden, or in Sweden because we don't have a stated workplace. So we can be wherever we want to. That's a nice thing. So being done mostly technical SEO, I wanted to just show you or talk to you about how I ended up in that, because I am not a techie or I'm not a developer myself. I actually studied linguistics. And then after university, I just ended up. So mostly the title of my biography would be Necessity is the Mother of All Innovations. And that has reflected in my whole career and all the things that I have done. So back in 2006, and this is a long time ago, I needed a job. So I started on OnGame, and then that was bought by Bwin, and I was there for a year and a half, and I worked as a QA tester, as a quality assurance tester with the dev teams, meaning I played poker 8 hours a day for a few months, and then I did other things as well, but I worked only with developers. In 2007, I ended up doing paid search and on-page SEO for another company, but then was made done redundant due to the financial crisis that happened in 2008. So I begged myself into being hired by a web agency. And I got the opportunity there to start my own SEO and marketing department. And at that time, that was pretty new. I mean, there were other people doing it, but the market wasn't as it is today. So we did a lot of things. So I did technical SEO mostly, but I also did social media. So because that was how the landscape was. I really enjoyed working with developers, and I decided that that was how things were going to be in the future. So let's turn on to how to do a technical SEO audit from a JavaScript sites, actually without knowing JavaScript, because you're not a developer as I am, but you can still do it. So let me tell you a story about how I ended up in doing this, or how I constructed this presentation, or the techniques I learned. In mid 2021, or mid 2020 actually. So I'm a bit confused about the years now. So it was last year. I was contracted to do a final technical audit of a 3-year-long web project. So they had built a web for 3 years. And then I had 2 months to do the technical audit and actually do the recommendations and help implement the fixes. And it was a JavaScript mess. If we had launched that as is, they would have not get any traffic, or they would have vanished from the internet, at least the organic traffic. So the new website was built in React with a client-side rendering method. And you who know that, you can already say that, oh my God, that is not going to go right. Because, yeah, it felt a bit like being hit by something hard in the head. It was super hard and it was complicated. And we turned off in like having a somewhat flat line of visibility, and then we launched and it went down a bit and then it went up again to normal, and we were like breathing again, and then something happened and we were like, okay, this wasn't so bad. It wasn't this scenario that everyone was talking about, that you will vanish from the internet earth and never be seen on Google again. So we were successful, but it was because I quickly learned how to audit JavaScript sites. And this is what I learned, and this is what I want to share with you. So the first thing that is really important is you need to know about rendering, what it is, and that Google renders all pages, even those who are not JavaScript. And CSS files helps putting everything together on the right place, and it gives everything the right size. This means that the CSS file actually tells Google what you think is important and what things you think is connected to each other. So let's talk about tools for rendering. How do you render and check what's what and what is not blocking? So also new projects, sites are often on staging environments with a no index tag. So you can't actually use the proper tools or the usual tools that you would use, and the tools that you hear about in all the other presentations about how to audit JavaScript, because it doesn't render no index, or sites that has no index. So how do you do it? You turn to something called Rendertron. And this is an open source project. It's based on something called Puppeteer, and it usually works fine. It's an open source project, and they are working on it on a daily basis. And you can check the how it's going for them on totally forgot the name, but there's a place where you can check in your stuff, and then you check that in that place. but go to Rendertron and render your pages and see what comes out. Because if there's something that is not rendered properly, you'll notice quite quickly, because either you don't have any styling, or there are buttons that you can't click, or there's something else that isn't right. So the other thing that you can use is ngrok. So ngrok is actually a very technical thing that you can use when you don't have a site or live or on a public website. So if you, for example, are in a dev environment and you need to use VPNs or be in a specific place, or have your IP address approved, etc., just to access the actual web page, you can't test it even with Puppeteer or Rendertron. So you need to create a tunnel between the local host and this tool, and then so ngrok will create this tunnel for you, and it creates a public URL that you can test. So you can test it in your tools, but you need developers for this. So you can't do it on your own unless you actually understand what is going on. And I tried, I didn't understand it, but I have developers, so that is a nice thing. I just asked them, and it took 30 minutes for them to set it up. So it wasn't a big thing. So the other thing that I use a lot, and I'm sure you do too, is the developer tools. And those are the inspect. You can right click on the web page and you choose inspect, and you get the developer tools. So check everything that is visible in the rendered code, because if you look at the show code, you will only see the JavaScript and you won't see what's rendered actually. You need to look at links and menus, especially. Those things are prone to not being done correctly and not being able to be rendered correctly. But also content behind tabs and other functionalities that demands a user to interact with the content before it is shown in a proper way. So that you need to check that this is also in the rendered code. And buttons that are clickable, see that they are not just clicking, that they are also leading somewhere, that the button is actually a link. And all footer elements, this is the place where all they try, I don't know why, but the developers tend to forget about the footer elements and everything in it. And I mean, why have a footer in there if you can't even render it and have it crawled and indexed to the links in there? Because most often they are navigational links in the footer. And then you have all the image elements, like both the images, but the alt tags and all of those things. If you don't have the CSS rendered together with it, maybe the images are too big, too small, on the wrong side, on the wrong place, etc. And then, of course, text. All text needs to be in the code. So this is the rule of thumb, is that everything that needs to be, that demands a mouse or something that you click on it, and before it's shown, though all of those things need to be in the actual code to be rendered. If it's, and we call it event-based, if anything is shown after an event happened, then Google won't see it. So that is the rule of thumb. Everything needs to be in this rendered code to be able to be indexed. So I said that links is the most important thing, and it is not, but it's the one place where where it usually fucks up. So check with the inspect tool. Does a link look like this? Yeah, then you're fine. Then that is totally okay. This is normality. It can even be like this, and this is a relative link, and the first one is an absolute, where you have the domain first. But you can also have just the subfolders. That is, I mean, not as good, but okay. You can also have an on-click event, as long as you have the anchor and href together with it. and then you have the subfolder. And I mean, it works. It will be found. It's not superb, but still works. But now we're talking about things that doesn't really work. You have an anchor, but there is no place for the search bar to say that you are going to this place, or this is the URL that you need to follow. So no, that's not going to be indexed. Even worse, if you remove the anchor and then you just have a button that has an event with a on-click event on it, or even the worst thing, you don't even have a button or anything telling you that this is supposed to be a link. You just have a spawn element telling you that this is a bucket of something. So there is a YouTube video of Martin Split, and I love watching it because it's super fun, and he explains it very well. So in any doubt, check that out. Okay, so when I talk about menus, they usually are not a problem in desktop mode. But as soon as you go to mobile, the big menu is truncated into a smaller one with just like design elements, and then all the links are gone. So this burger menu needs an event to open up and actually load the links. And yeah, then the links are gone. You can't see anything, and the main menu, it doesn't exist. So the solution to this is actually tell the developers that they need to have the links opened, or they need to be in the code, in the rendered code, but they can hide it with CSS. But again, then the CSS file needs to be in there as well. All right. Speed matters, not only because Core Web Vitals, but it's a good way to find errors when you check speed in all these tools, because then you see what is actually pausing things up and what is breaking, what is not showing. So test with Lighthouse and GTmetrix, and if you have it on a dev site, you can use ngrok to do this. Are there any errors and warnings? And these are the things that, yeah, you need to fix those, and you just put them in a report and report it. Are there any render blocking JavaScript? And then you will see that, because there's going to be a long line and say that in the waterfall in GTmetrix saying that you have this is blocking your full rendering experience. Are there too many calls for JavaScript scripts? Okay, JavaScripts, yeah, scripts. So are there too many if there are like 100 or even 50? I mean, each and every call is going to take time, and it's going to take resources from the server to answer them. And so with each call, you also are prone for errors, or if anything gets stuck on the way. So it's better to have fewer calls, as few calls as possible per site. Or per render is what I recommend. And also look if, are they too heavy? Are the JavaScript scripts too heavy to load? Does that take up time? Because then also they contain too many things or too much information, and probably you're not going to use all of that. So there's redundant code that the developer can get rid of. You report all of this. You don't have to fix it yourself, but you can mention code bundling and splitting. And I only know in a conceptual way what that is, so I'm not going to try to explain it, but it's something about putting things together and then pointing out in one file where the exact place for a script piece, that's a piece of script that is needed to render this particular thing. But you don't need to know that, your developers do. All right, so we have audited our things, we have our report. Now we're going to implement our things, or technical findings, to make this new site really good, as dazzling as the one I helped out with. So you need developers, and they are nice in general. But things you can make so that your collaboration becomes easier, is to respect the developer's way of working. And it's all often agile, and they often work in sprints, so you cannot force your stuff on them. They will come to you when it's time for you to present your things, and then they will probably listen. But when they do, be prepared to explain in detail what you want, and you need to read up before presenting. And I watched all the JavaScript YouTube tutorials there is on the internet. and so I could be there and answer all the questions, and then the ones that I didn't actually know were kind of complex, so we found out together, and that was fine. Do not assume they know what you're talking about, because they don't teach SEO in dev classes. And you often say that, shouldn't they know this? No, they shouldn't. That's your job to tell them why and the importance of it. And make sure to report back the results from your work together, because everyone likes to know what the results their work gave, or how good it was. And that makes everyone feel better, and you will have a better collaboration after this project and in the next project. And then the most important slide is be nice, and remember that treats in cookies and cakes go a long way in working with developers. And you will need to work with developers throughout the whole technical auditing of JavaScript. But they won't know what to audit. You need to do that, but they will tell you how to fix things, or what is and how to do it, and if it's costly or not, and how to prioritize. So it's a collaboration. Right. Thank you for listening to our presentation.
Thank you very much, Ulrika. I particularly enjoyed that last little kitty slide.
The Cookie Monster.
Yeah, well, that was I do love chocolate chip cookies. So you said that that you need to do the audit, but the developers will, help you for that. And you also said that you have taught yourself a lot of these skills. Yeah. So can we go back to sort of how you where would you go? So because sometimes people may think this is completely overwhelming, but if they don't do it, then they may not get another project, and also if they don't do it, they don't learn it. So how do you one, maybe find the right resources, and two, if you're costing this project out, because you said, oh, I had 2 months, how do you know how much time to give yourself?
So I'll start with how I learned this. And yeah, I watch a lot of YouTube clips, and a lot of them, and I listen a lot, and I am not afraid to ask. Maybe because I spent 1.5 years with really the best developers ever. They all work on like Klarna and Spotify and Google and other workplaces now. But so I still keep in contact with them. But they love to explain.
Oh, your sound just went. So can you say it again? They love to explain?
So if you ask someone about their work and what it means, they are happy to explain back what it means for you, and like how you can do it. So they want to talk about, because this is their passion. So they want to talk about it. Just be nice. That is general. But also read up. Do your homework. You need to read up and teach yourself. And the internet is full of information. You just need to Google it. The other thing, how much time do I need to do it? Yeah, well, I spent maybe 100 hours per month. So in total, 200 hours to do that. But this is also the first time, and that was including everything, like talking to developers and not only doing the audit, but also testing, etc.
Wow, so that was 200 hours. So
I think an audit would take maybe 40 hours.
Yeah. Okay, and then so it's an extra, would you say 200 on top, or would you say like
no, included?
Okay. Right, yeah, that's some time. And Marty, do you have any questions for Ulrika?
I love the presentation, thank you. And my question is, what do you answer when C-suite people come back to you and say, if we make the investment, how much money will we make if we do this?
I actually always do the traffic estimation and do the ROI calculations and everything. And in this case, it was like, if you don't do this, this is what you're going to get. And that is 0. And everything above that, I mean, that's a win, and
That's
I can
easy.
give that to you.
That's easy.
So that was easy, actually, yeah. But you don't always have that. So traffic estimations and then ROI calculations, then and you have to, like, yeah, from experience and search volume and yeah, guesstimates, etc. But money is what C-level, that's the language they talk.
Yes.
Very important. Well, thank you very much, Ulrika. Sylvia's also saying thank you. It's very interesting.
Thank
Yes, it
you.
is so important, JS, nowadays for tech SEO. And how can we get a hold of you, Ulrika?
So Twitter is maybe the best way, but also LinkedIn, or email me. You can do that if you want to.
And you're also part of the Women in Tech SEO community.
I am, so you can find me there as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much for sharing all your tips. No worries, and we'll have these shared around most likely tomorrow after everyone has their presentations. I'll send it around. And I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Marty. If you want to share your slides, Marty, I will bring them onto the screen. I'll just put these in the middle. Oh, I can't see it yet, so maybe it'll take a couple of seconds.
Hold on.
So for those that have enjoyed today, thanks for liking the video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will be running Turn Digi in 2022. I am looking to also run it in French and Spanish. So if you would like to be involved, please just let me know. And I'm going to pass over to Marty, who will be talking about how they've done creative content at his agency over in Delft.
This is where I mute my phone so there are no disturbances. And this is where I set my clock so I know how long I'm taking. Hi, everybody, and thank you for hanging in there for the last speaker. I'm so happy to be with you today. For perspective, using the system, AimClear has won the most US search awards in history at 22, almost the most in the world, and we only get to enter in America, not in UK and EU, like the others who lead the world. I miss you, Europe. I miss you, Europeans. I miss seeing wooden racks drying codfish in northern Norway. And I'm ready to come out and conquer again. And I just can't wait to see you. We're going to talk about a dynamic copy variable-based vertical framework, which seems like a bunch of words. But basically, it means outputting amazingly clickable, highly focused snippets of content for various uses. We'll call it VBF for variable-based framework. We've been using this system for like 9 years at our company, and it's really exciting because this is how the internet turned out to be with dynamic copy. We'll give you a little background on where the technique comes from, what you use it for, the building blocks of the tactic, and a case study, which I think you'll enjoy because it's Black Hat world. Just really beautiful, beautiful creative for their new marketplace. The building blocks of variable-based framework, VBF, are word clusters. We'll talk about how to use word clusters to output copy, and then another case study. Then a light version, a basic version that's really simple to use in a case for that, and then a reference for the most common word clusters. Some of this we won't spend a lot of time on, but you can get the presentation from Joe and use this as a reference. This technique is money. So for background, as most of you know, dynamic creative plays a massive role. Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, YouTube, other channels don't take fixed ads the same way they did before. They take statements or snippets that you rotate to form the right ad. It's MarTech. Its key phrase is driven by MarTech. In fact, it's difficult to figure out the exact combinations of what worked with the right data in some channels. And also, we know that effectiveness with creative often is the most important marketing concern. If we look at optimizing something and changing it 0.3% on a $50 million account or 2% on a $100,000 account, oftentimes that's not near as important as changing out creative. There's lots of uses for integrated copy, short form copy in various structures. And this is a framework for vertical, standardized, branded marketing copy that's short. I'll tell you about the uses coming up. And the building blocks are word clusters. The word clusters themselves, there's some that are used all the time and some that are custom. I'll give you a glossary of them. So what do you use short copy for? I mean, like half of a tweet or a tweet. We use it to make dynamic ads in major channels. We use it to make full-on ads for channels that are not dynamic by combining them. SEO copy, H1 tags, blog post headlines, copy for banner ads, email headings, subjects, positioning statements, copy that you use in social posts or in a video or even print ads. So what makes great short form copy? Well, first, familiarity. This is 2022 almost. And if you have a new brand or a somewhat known brand, you can't just say it's the real thing or just do it like Coca-Cola or Nike. It has to be familiar, but it has to have enough standard words for people to remember. And it has to be flexible without giving up that familiarity for the many products that some of us market or for the several products some of us market. We need to control the tone of words and the voice of the copy, and it needs to represent the brand appropriately. Like, you can't be a church and be dropping F-bombs with asterisks. As a marketer, I'm a control freak. Like, I want complete definition of the messaging. It needs to fit all the important concepts, and we can control it. This is a framework for creative control freaks. So the variable framework solution is that you use foundation words in every version, and those don't change. Those are the parts people hold on to. I'll show you that in detail upcoming, but you need variables that handle any concepts that are important, all of them that you need to get in. The approved words in the framework lock in the voice and the tone, make it memorable, and give brands control. And then in the word clusters, there's additional layers of nested variables to add even more depth. So let me explain all this to you so you can use this PowerPoint presentation as a resource guide for your own explorations. I just thought it's cool to say Turn Digi and have a Rubik's Cube. Turn Digi. Okay, I think you get it. Even though it's Turnbull, turn, love it. So let me introduce word clusters to you. There's some that are used in every case study. And like, for instance, target audiences and positive adjectives. And I'll walk you through every one of these word clusters in our 12 to 15 minutes together. So you could see that this sheet, which I'll provide you with for Black Hat World, is all laid out into approved words to use for the brand or the call to action. And there's output, the short form copy, which I'll show you. So almost always we start by listing the targets, the audience. In this case, marketing Black Hat World's new marketplace. We're targeting web writers or proxy owners or website sellers or social media hackers or affiliate marketers. And you can see we're handling the possibility of plural versus singular. Then there's audience prefixes or suffixes that clarify. So it's affiliate marketer geniuses, or it's gray hat logo designers. So it's audiences. and its prefixes and suffixes, basically how you want to complement or clarify the target audiences for creative color. Then there's the approved ways to say the brand. And they're subtle, actually, because BHW Marketplace, you might know that means Black Hat World, or maybe not. Or maybe you're afraid of Black Hat and you'll find out what it is later. Or maybe you already know, or maybe you've never heard of it. But saying Black Hat World matters. It takes some thought to think about how you want to say the brand. And in other brands, no problem. Super duper duper easy. Then another common word cluster is, what do end users do with whatever you're marketing? In the case of Black Hat World Marketplace, they're hacking profits or exploiting loopholes or coloring between the lines or beating the system or breaking the internet or frustrating competitors or outwitting the norms. And inside any word cluster, you can have something in brackets, which essentially adds another layer of nested variables. Look at exploit internet holes in the center. Here's the clarification list, the nested variables list. It could be evade internet holes. It could be elude internet holes, or skirt, or skip, or traverse. See the control we have here? Then there's the positive adjectives that we say about your products or the people that use them. You could say that the web developers that use the product are brainy or brilliant or resourceful, or you could say products that are shrewd or slick or smart or stealthy or wise, the positive adjectives. Then there's the way you refer to competitors. You need to be very careful. You can't say dipshits unless you are really willing to say that. But lots of times we do target competitors' audiences and we do reference competitors. And this gives you a way to define how aggressive you want to be. And then there's negative adjectives that you could use to describe people who don't use what you're marketing or use the competitor's project. And so you could say absurd web developers use the competition. So you could be delicate with this. This is Black Hat World, so we could be very, very aggressive. Oh, and by the way, my relationship with Black Hat World is just friends. I'm friends with them and I help them with this creative, or we did. Then the paradigms you want to smash, the rules you want to break. In this case, we're beating terms of services limits or defeating traditional actions or the system or etiquette or confines or customs. And in many case studies, you need to give people reassurance that using this approach is okay. Never more true than with Black Hat World. So you need to say without getting caught or legitimately or no penalties or honestly. Every marketing case study has calls to action. And so the word cluster for call to action standardizes how you ask for the money, snag it now, or start your journey now. Emojis are awesome, love emojis. So for this case study, it's a black hat and a shark. So here's the output, and we're gonna break this down so we could just enjoy it for a minute here. Clever website broker black hats exploit holes in the internet with BHW Marketplace. Coders evade scrutiny, exploit gaps, fly under the radar. You could go web developers, evade scrutiny, exploit gaps. Hey, SEO black hat genius. Hey, proxy owner, black hat genius. See, this framework is a way to make sure you get everything in and create pieces you get. I'm sure you get it. Clever coders confound crazy confines with BHW Marketplace. Discerning digital marketers dodge dumbass barriers with the BHW Bazaar. This is incredibly clickable copy, and you could use it across the entire marketing ecosystem to standardize. Here's how you turn it into the combination of something to hold on to and something that is variable based. Take the statement, hey, SEO black hat genius. exploit gaps, profit short term, join BHW's new marketplace. Okay, let's get granular with this and look at what word clusters were used to construct that. Hey, psychographic, suffix, positive, adjective, emoji, action, comma, action, CTA, brand. So you go, all right, what do we want to test in there? What are we going to lock down as the way we always say it? We're going to lock down, hey, hashtag, Black Hat Genius, emoji, exploit gaps, join BHW's new marketplace, and we're going to test the variables in brackets in yellow, which is affiliate marketer, hey, website sellers, hey, domainers, and for profit short term, we'll test break the internet and color between the lines. So this is the holy grail of something familiar enough to be a positioning statement, so people are always learning what your company is, at the same time as you're exploring vertical marketplaces and variables that might be the winning combination for your creative. It also lets you decide what you're going to have on the left-hand side. Am I going to say the audience first? Am I going to say beat the rules first? Am I going to say smart user first? Which gets us back to marketing actually before the internet. So here's the process. Brilliant proxy manager, gray hat, sidestep idiotic terms of services limits with marketplace. Lockdown, brilliant, gray hats, idiotic. That's always what we're going to say. So the part that users can hold on to and remember after they see it 6 times, brilliant, gray hats, idiotic, marketplace. And then when we're creating our short form snippets, remember that state of the art in the channels is just the whole statement. In the future, we can expect that they'll nest variables like this. I won't spend much time on this, but this is another case study that you could look at for healthy light in the marketplace. It's a different set of word clusters that has what it solves and what the solve word like transforms, or what it solves for, which is seasonal depressions, and the positive solution. And you get gorgeous copy. Effective employees love natural light filters. Wellness coordinators love full spectrum lights. Perfectly balanced light filters can reduce employee headaches. And then here's a really simple version you can use. Just simply nest the variables in line in your statements. In this case, kids, boys and girls, or durable or middle school, or durable or built to last. So this is a list of the most common word clusters. I don't need to review these for you here, except to say when you're doing B2B and you're selling people who sell to people, you're targeting people who sell to other people, B2B. Sometimes you're not just saying your B2B customers targets, but the targets. Essentially for B2B, it just goes a whole layer deeper, where you're telling the people you're marketing to how they're going to help their customers. Complex, I know, but that would be a conversation for a much longer talk. And it's very interesting. So I miss you guys, and I hope to see, I know there's some Oktoberfest friends on this meeting right now because I saw some tweets. You know who you are. Hello there. I'll be back in Amsterdam after 8 days shooting the Northern Lights in Iceland coming up. And oh, the Bavarian Alps. My last name is Weintraub. So I miss our people, but I can assure you that I'm keeping very busy here in Minnesota in our gorgeous lakes and streams and rivers. Please friend me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you and just know you. I'm in it for the relationships. And to the search award judges and entrants that I also know are on this call, I'm honored to be in your community. Yep, we've got the most in US history, we do. Which nails do you think are mine? Never mind. Thank you so much. And Joe, thank you for having me on your splendid and diverse and beautiful podcast and the good that you're doing in the world today.
Oh, thank you very much. I wanted to keep your slides up there. Then we could have said which one were your feet. I was going to say the one with the blue toenails.
It's the blue one, yeah. Because
Yeah,
I always go aim clear blue. I do.
Oh, I like blue too. SEO Joe blogs. Well, thank you very much for that in-depth presentation. And as Marty said, yes, everyone that has signed up to Turn Digi will get a link to the presentation. I wanted just on time really to ask you quickly. Obviously, Sylvia said, "Great seeing you again, Marty." If sort of how long did it take you to sort of have this structure up? I mean, you are the founder of the company, so you have a bit more say so as to say, okay, we need to do, this type of framework to do creative content, then we can put it on, obviously, other clients. But as a junior member of the team, how could you actually try and convince and tell the C-level, you know what, we need a new process involved for creative content, and I think we should do something like this, for example?
That's such an amazing question. So for me and a brand, it takes a relatively short amount of time. And we start by going to search data, and so paid social and paid search data, and mining anything that worked in some pivot that is usually has conversion, volume, and engagement, or CTR. Like, we want to see that people always engage with it and buy shit when they're done. And then we put that all on a list, and then we scrape through anything we can find anywhere in their materials, anything we can find. Sometimes we interview principals, make a big list, and then verticalize it, and it takes shape. To answer your question, I could do it with a brand in about 4 hours, which is like, if it takes longer than that, you're overthinking it, because most of the time brands know what they want to say, but it's just buried with a bunch of shit, and it's never had a fair rotation. We've seen brands make hundreds of millions only by implementing smarter rotation of existing creative. So far as being a junior team member, that's a very intuitive question, because our beautiful creative director passed away in July, and we're onboarding a colleague, creative director, who I've worked with 25 years on and off, and he helped inspire this system, actually. And so I've been training him into it, and it's taking one client that's taking about double the time, and he's 100% bought into it. Because no matter how you're making up you go to the client and you say, I can use any of these words in any combination, okay, redline it, please. And then you don't have to get any more creative approved ever. Like, all the creative is approved. So far as getting buy-in, it was an overnight thing that took me 12 of the 15 years Aim Clear has been in business. I've had people at the company who used it for some time, and then other times we didn't. And now pretty well everybody is bought into it. And I'm writing a book about it. I'm writing a book about it right now. I'm hoping it'll be the last important contribution to thought leadership of my marketing career.
Well, thank you very much for that detailed explanation. So I would say, then you just need to have a good case study, and it's good that you said 4 hours. Otherwise, maybe you're overthinking too much. Ulrika, do you have any questions for Marty before I ask anything for the audience?
My mind is blown. Oh my God, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
I was like,
I'm so happy.
I need to start doing this.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy you feel that way.
I've been doing the keyword expansions this way, but this was next level, or the next level after that.
Oh, and if you use SEO, if you base this on SEO gap analysis, and make sure that, you can extrapolate this to if you base it on SEO gap, this is your SEO or quality score killer app.
So I'm copying you and stealing it with pride. I'm not going to make it better, because don't think I can.
So,
But
so happy
I
to
will
share
thank
it.
you on Twitter.
So happy to
Yeah.
share it. So happy to share it.
It would be good. Yeah, you have. I guess you've obviously done through an Excel or a massive file.
It's not a very complicated format, so you could just duplicate it from the PowerPoint that
Oh,
people can pull. Everything that I just showed will be in the PowerPoint that and also, interestingly, Black Hat World is a really fun case study because it's so cheeky. And I presented this to somebody who had a very high level position in a very famous platform, and realized that they had been battling with Black Hat World for years. I asked my team if they wanted me to use more normal case studies than the Black Hat World. They went, no, it's so cheeky. It's really fun. People pay attention. It's really a good case study to
Amazing.
show.
well, thank you. I will definitely be using this more, especially with the keyword research for some of my clients. Thank you very much, Marty, and thank you, Ulrika and Azeem, who had to go see family today. Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to add one last couple of slides. So thanks everyone for joining from home, and also, as I said, to the other communities that have supported us. So Women in Tech SEO, a lot of the people from Women in Tech have joined. Thank you, Sylvia, for being on the show today, Mufadal and Azeem, Thomas, and a few of the others that are not signed in. I will be running Turn Digi in 2022. It is an event where you can dial in from anywhere, and I would like to also see speakers from different countries dial in and take part. So please contact me for that. And also just want to say a big thank you as well to my sister, Ruth. There she is here in the blue for doing all the artwork. She's a mom and of two, and also working full time as well. And her husband's away. So she's been doing 2 jobs at the same time. And hopefully he'll be back for Christmas. So big thank you to her for helping out, and for our speakers, Marty, Ulrika, and Azeem, for being here today, as well as the audience. If anybody has any questions, please contact me. I'm SEO Joe Blogs, and I'll be happy to answer anything that you have. So I'm just gonna see you all hopefully soon, and I'll see you, Marty and Ulrika, in the back room. Bye.
Thank you so much, Joe.